Hey, it's Joe, and I don't have to tell you, relationships are critical in Washington. But how do you, A, find out who the key players are, and B, figure out how to reach out to them? Well, I want to tell you about Leadership Connect. It's been an absolute lifesaver for us as we expand our operations and outreach here at Washington Tech. Leadership Connect, it's the digital service used by top federal contractors and government affairs leaders to contact decision makers and develop those strategic relationships. Visit leadershipconnect.io and join the community. I love it, and I'm 100% sure you will too. That's leadershipconnect.io. Try it now.
With the democratization of the platform now, where it's become an affordable price for a prosumer, that really was the inflection point that the industry needed.
Welcome to the Washington Tech Policy Podcast.
The latest tech law and policy news and brightest tech law and policy experts wherever you are.
So you can stay informed, on the move, in less time.
From Washington, D.C., it's the Washington Tech Policy Podcast.
With Joe Miller.
Joe Miller.
A revealing Washington Post expose finds that Facebook is hiring GOP policy professionals only. Since the GOP is disproportionately white, what are the implications for diversity and inclusion at the tech giant's policy shop? And Gary Radburn is my guest. A Washington Post report by Craig Timberg doesn't bode well for lawyers of color and Democrats seeking to work in Facebook's policy office here in Washington. According to anonymous sources who contributed to the story, GOP operative Joel Kaplan, who dated Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg when they attended Harvard together, has no intention anytime soon of adding Democrats to his policy team. Only Republicans are driving Facebook's policymaking efforts, often acceding to Trump administration demands by enacting policies like the ban on removing political ads from the platform in which politicians make false statements. Last year, civil rights leaders met with Mark Zuckerberg at his home in Palo Alto in an attempt to persuade him to remove such ads, to no avail, likely after taking Kaplan's advice into account. So the disproportionate power dynamic at Facebook is just as out of whack as compared to the demographics of its user base as Congress is to the populace. 78% of lawmakers in Congress are white, even though whites comprise only 61% of the total U.S. population. The University of California at Los Angeles has banned the use of facial recognition surveillance on campus. Fight for the Future reported on Medium last week. The decision came amidst growing backlash against the 45,000-student university, including a nationwide campaign to prevent the spread of facial recognition across college campuses. Schools like MIT, Harvard, Brown, and Columbia have issued public statements stating that they would not institute a facial recognition program. But UCLA decided to go ahead and see if it could roll out an always-on biometric scanning and identification system anyway, until it ultimately caved to pressure from the UCLA community. Here in D.C., GW and American have stated publicly that they might use facial recognition technology on campus, but the University of Maryland, on the other hand, has said they won't. UVA has also said that it will not implement facial recognition as part of its campus safety program. Engineers and other white-collar workers at Kickstarter have voted to form a union, according to the New York Times, becoming one of the first tech companies to do so. The vote was by a narrow margin, 46-37, but the decision to unionize has put to rest many months of back and forth and tension at the company. According to a new investigative report by Thomas Brewster at Forbes, federal law enforcement officials have been raiding tech companies to obtain their users' medical records data. And this isn't just DNA data either. We're all too familiar with the risks associated with giving our DNA data to companies like 23andMe and Ancestry.com. But this is about how law enforcement is obtaining warrants to access your medical history, including any medications you're taking, by showing the warrant to a company called Dr. Chrono, which specializes in warehousing this information online. That's Dr. Chrono. The Guardian reports that Seattle City Councilwoman Kashma Sawant introduced a bill last week that would impose a 1.7% payroll tax on Amazon and other companies among Seattle's top 3%, generating up to as much as $300 million per year. 3/4 of proceeds from the fund would go towards building affordable publicly owned homes. The remaining 25% would go to convert homes from using oil and gas to clean electric energy. According to a new report in Motherboard, Shipt, Target's delivery app, is retaliating against employees for posting comments or criticisms about Shipped's labor practices. One Shipped employee reported publicly that after Shipped tweaked its algorithm, she went from earning $200 per week to $0 to $25 per week. Shipped then deactivated her account. Some employee accounts have been deactivated for no apparent reason, leaving employees unaware of and on pins and needles wondering when the next shoe will drop. Finally, Ars Technica reports that a Northeastern University study has concluded that there is no apparent political bias in content moderation on YouTube. For the last several years, Republicans, including Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, have claimed that platforms like YouTube are biased against conservative viewpoints. But after reviewing some 84,068 comments on 268 YouTube videos, the researchers found that the moderation of hate speech by right-leaning commenters versus that of left-leaning commenters was about the same. And you can find links to all of these stories in the show notes. Stay with us.
Washington, the inclusive voice of tech policy. Because America won't stand still for the same old insiders. Washington, moving the needle.
My guest today is Gary Radburn, Director of VR and AR Solutions at Dell. As part of his role, he works closely with Dell customers on VR AR deployments and helps to establish DL's VR centers of excellence with locations around the world for businesses and consumers to experience and learn more about VR in the real world. He has held various roles across the technology industry over the last 3 decades, ranging from engineering to sales and marketing, and has experience across all aspects of designing products and solutions and bringing them to market. Please welcome Gary Radburn. Gary, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Joe. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell us about your role at Dell.
Sure. My role is very, very exciting. I mean, they say that if you enjoy what you do, then it's not really a job. Being director of virtual and augmented reality, it's an absolutely fascinating role. I work across all different lines of business. I work across all different sectors of the industry, whether that be healthcare, oil and gas, building, manufacturing, automotive. So I get to see a lot of different things every single day. And quite frankly, no 2 days are the same. When we start dealing with healthcare, for instance, when we're seeing people with PTSD being helped by VR, it's something that when I took the role, I never even envisaged that would be part of the remit, and it's just really, really exciting.
So beyond gaming and entertainment, how is virtual reality and augmented reality, how are they being used as a tool for education and social good?
Well, virtual and augmented reality has been around for many, many years now, originated in the 50s. And as you say, most people think of VR and AR as being the gaming industry and for pleasure. However, corporations have really seized hold of that now, and also ways of reaching people that you couldn't reach before. So a couple of examples of that is that they've actually had education studies done where knowledge retention and knowledge transfer is a lot quicker and a lot more efficient when you're using VR as a medium. Immersed inside of content actually allows people to experience it, and it sticks with people a lot longer than reading a textbook or having an audio-visual presentation. So you can really engage with your audience in a different way. In terms of social good, then we're actually seeing a lot of use cases of that, of taking people to locations which are perhaps hazardous or places in the world which people wouldn't normally go to. We have partnerships with National Geographic, for instance, and a gentleman by the name of Mike Lebecki, who went and did a piece in 360 video on the plight of polar bears. Not many people can get out to the expanse of Greenland, and so by actually immersing people inside of that, bringing them closer to their natural environment and showing them some of the things that we as a human population, by polluting the planet with plastics, etc., how that's actually affecting animals animals which we wouldn't normally get to see in their native habitat. That gives you that empathetic connection and allows people to then be able to change their habits in a positive way to actually make changes in the environment.
So tell us about some of the programs that Dell is working on specifically to promote VR and AR for social good.
We do a lot of work with the healthcare industry. We partner with the University of Southern California. There's a project there that's actually looking at PTSD and treatment for veterans who have actually seen active service and got PTSD triggers in there. Then rather than exposure therapy, which is talking about it, actually working with them to develop VR pieces which give you far more effective treatment and quicker time to resolution to actually help those people. And Michael Dell is actually behind that as well. I think it was last year we actually made an award to promoting this research inside of VR. From a more personal level inside of the organization, then I'm actually based out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Durham is just up the road, and the city of Durham were actually looking for a piece to engage with their community and to talk more about city planning. City planning is quite a dry subject from what I understand, and so working with a local agency called Lucid Dream, we actually developed a piece to engage the community with what goes into city planning. How do they actually plan what houses go where do they relocate people? And to show that there's more in it than just we're going to put houses here for houses' sake. If you're regentrifying an area, changing how it's being used, then how does that resonate with the community? So it was done as not an education piece, but more of a conversational piece, and the gamification of city planning. So people inside a headset could actually make decisions about how they were going to redevelop the city of Durham, where they were going to put people, and then have explanations of why some of their decisions weren't perhaps the best ones that could have been made. It was incredibly successful, and the city of Durham are now going around showing that at their events to engage with their community. So for the social good, the Mike Lebecki piece that I mentioned earlier, the healthcare pieces, and engaging with the community in a different way are really resonating and showing that we can actually give education in a fun way and a new and exciting way by leveraging this type of technology.
We're going to take a quick break here, Gary, and hear more from you in just a sec. Stay with us. What has the demand been like for the use of this technology, Gary? What are you seeing?
Well, we're seeing a steady uptick. You look at some of the analysts and their projections for the next few years, there's definitely a hockey stick type effect going on. I think when VR and AR was introduced this time around, I like to call this the fifth wave of VR. We've had several introductions in the past that haven't been quite successful, but with the democratization of the platform now, where it's become an affordable price for a prosumer, that really was the inflection point that the industry needed. Accessibility to different platforms, accessibility to hardware to be able to drive the experience, it all came together at the same time. So we're now starting to see lots of tire kickers in the last 2 years. Companies and organizations that were looking at it to say, what can it really do? What's hype and what's real? We've now got to a point where people have finished doing their proof of concepts. People are actually now deploying large-scale VR deployments inside their organizations because the hard work has been done. 2 years, 3 years, the tools have now grown to a level where you don't have to be a programmer to design a training course for VR. It's now drag and drop with the things you want, like PDF files, PowerPoint presentations and videos, and you can create a training environment very, very quickly and very, very easily. I mean, inside of Dell, we've taken a lot of the heavyweight lifting out of that as well. We formed what we call the Technology Partner Program, where we've invited companies to come under the Dell wing, as it were. And we then put them in contact with customers of ours who are looking for VR expertise in particular areas. So what that does is that now shortens the time to a successful project. It gets a much more successful project out the door with previously proven products that have already gone out. And so consequently, the companies now are finding that it's a lower cost to implement, faster implementation, and they're getting a faster route to their market.
So what new advancements, to pronounce it correctly and not with my New York accent, what advancements can we expect with the technology, and how will this sort of shape its application for social good down the road?
Well, I mean, this is me speaking in looking at a crystal ball type thing. I obviously can't allude to any future developments that we might be doing, but the way I've seen the industry going is that there's going to be smaller and smaller platforms. At the moment, AR and VR are really still quite in their infancy, even though they're on that fifth wave. People are looking for smaller, more lightweight headsets. People are looking for untethered solutions. So at the moment, if you have an untethered solution, you're running on a lower processor, lower graphics than you would be if you were using a full-fledged workstation with VR when you were actually tethered to it. What we've been working at, and we've demoed it at the last few shows that we've done, is where you can now stream VR from a workstation to a headset itself. Now, we're doing that over 802.11 AC at the moment, which is like gigabit wireless. However, for the future, we've obviously got 5G that's rolling out. 5G being a lower latency, higher bandwidth throughput, then I would see the advent of 5G communications really helping to drive VR and AR at the edge. So people can then have experiences that are outside of the home when they're actually just roaming around. Imagine, for instance, an AR headset where you're wandering around a new college campus, you're just starting and you don't know where your next lecture is going to be. And then overlaid in AR through wireless communication, you might then get directions to your next lecture, which you'll get dynamically. So moving away from the games that are actually using AR today on phones to actually having a hybrid headset perhaps, which is both VR and AR enabled, and then communicating over 5G. If you've got the lightweight headset, because the compute power is now at the core being distributed to you wirelessly, you can now take a lot of that weight and decrease the form factor of the headset, which will then make it more appealing. More headsets leads to democratization. Democratization leads to lower prices, which will then actually give more accessibility to this fascinating and, quite frankly, revolutionary new technology.
Well, that sounds great, Gary. And like you said, we're used to thinking about VR and AR in terms of gaming. So it's refreshing to see that it's going to be used in tandem with things like telemedicine and 5G to bring needed services, education, and other types of technology to people in remote areas and people who in not so remote areas who have just trouble moving around generally. So thanks so much, and I'm glad to see Dell leading the way here.
Thanks very much, Jay. Appreciate your time.
What are some final ideas you'd like to leave with us before we close, and where can folks find you online?
Okay, finding us online is pretty easy. It's www.delltechnologies.com. And that's where you can go into all our different product lines and areas from there as like the landing point. The thought I'd like to leave is that VR and AR, as we've said, is really developing from where we are now. I implore people to have patience. We seem to be in an instant society now where everybody wants instant gratification. You know, we used to wait 5-7 days, sometimes 4 weeks in the old days when you applied for things off the back of comic books, showing my age now. But you know, now it's like, we can order things and we can receive them in an hour to 2 hours. VR and AR is still growing. Today is the first day of the rest of VR. It's going to get there, it's going to take some time, and it's going to be an exciting ride along the way. Don't wait, join the revolution now, try VR now if you haven't already, because it's only going to get better from here on in.
Gary Radburn, Director of Virtual Reality and Augmented Reality Solutions at Dell. Gary, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Joe.
That concludes episode 220 of our podcast. Thanks so much for listening. If you like what we do here, leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps us out. Also, make a note now and register RSVP today at washingtech.com/TechConverge 2020 for our inaugural conference, which is being held at NYU's DC Academic Center, located on 13th and L in downtown Washington, D.C. That's L Street Northwest. Again, find the registration information at washingtech.com/TechConverge 2020. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you back here next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Washington Tech.